got Mike Lawler with us, the Republican New York congressman, sits on the House Financial Services Committee. Congressman, always good to have you. I'm hearing more sort of whispering about, well, there is a middle ground, just, pushing this back a little bit, an extension that would take us into, I think, September has been mentioned. What do you think of that as they sort of iron out all these differences?
Well, the bottom line is President Biden and Senate Majority Leader Schumer need to negotiate with the Speaker. That has been my parameters from the start. The President and the Senate Majority Leader must negotiate, we must cut spending, and we must not default. And so, a short-term extension obviously would buy some time, but the issue remains. President Biden has refused to negotiate. And so, they're going to meet tomorrow, and then immediately thereafter, President Biden is coming to my district on Wednesday morning to, rail against MAGA Republicans rather than really doing the work that needs to be done here. It wasn't too long ago, Neil, that Vice President Biden negotiated with then Speaker Boehner to come up with some spending reforms to lift the debt ceiling. That's what needs to happen here. You look at our economy, a 41-year record high on inflation, banks collapsing. People are struggling, and it's because of the Biden administration's policies. $5 trillion in new spending drove the record inflation, and it put our national debt at over $31 trillion. This cannot continue.
I know you feel very strong about that. You could also argue we went from an economy that was stopped with COVID, nothing was going on. Obviously, we got back to work. Obviously, that's going to ignite inflation. But you're right. I mean, that was a big mix. I guess what I'm asking you now is this idea of an extension, though, that seems to be getting discussed even among some of your more conservative colleagues as a way just to take the heat off getting something done now. Now, I don't know what that would involve, Congressman, but it sounds to me like punting. It sounds to me like pushing it back.
Look, we are facing a debt crisis in this country, approaching $32 trillion. It was a little over a decade ago when we were at about $9 trillion. So, both parties bear responsibility here, and both parties need to come together to deal with our crisis. Yes, we have to lift the debt ceiling. Yes, we have to pay our previous debts incurred. No, we cannot default. But we cannot continue to borrow and print at these levels. And so a short-term extension would obviously buy some more time here, considering that we're looking at 3 weeks. But the president needs to show a good faith negotiation with the Speaker. Kicking the can down the road is not going to change the construct here. We still need to have an honest dialogue and discussion about how we move forward. And so whether we have to raise the debt ceiling in 3 weeks or whether we do a short-term extension to the end of September, the bottom line is we're still going to have to deal with this.
Do you worry that a market sell-off, a steep one, would do it, would get both parties alerted to action, much as it did during the financial crisis when there was that rescue for troubled assets and banks, the TARP, as it was known, the Troubled Asset Relief Program, and that prompted, the failed vote first, the 800 sell-off after that, for them to come back and get something done. You could argue in retrospect whether it was worth what they did getting done, but what do you think?
Look, it shouldn't take that. Everybody needs to be an adult here. And we cannot default on the full faith and credit of the United States and put our markets at risk. But we cannot continue to borrow and print at these levels. And so everybody needs to be an adult. Everybody needs to get in a room. The Speaker has been calling for the president to negotiate for months. The House Republicans passed a bill 2 weeks ago. Senate Democrats can't do anything. They don't have the votes. Chuck Schumer could say all he wants about a clean debt ceiling. He doesn't even have the votes to do that. So everybody needs to put their boy pants on and negotiate so we can move forward and avoid a default.
We shall see. The closer we get, it makes me wonder whether people are hearing exactly what you said, Congressman. We'll know soon enough. Thank you. Always good seeing you.